And also, again, welcome to our dear participants from all over the country. Our webinar today is entitled Cisco Live Sessions, Introduction to Cybersecurity, Chapter 1, The Need for Cybersecurity. So this webinar is organized by the Digital Learners Project of the ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau, or the ILCDP, of the Department of Information and Communications Technology in partnership with Cisco Networking Academy. The introduction to cybersecurity is designed to explore cybersecurity as a potential specialization in IT. And this course materials will assist participants in developing the skills needed to do the following. Is to understand the importance of safe online behaviors, as well as describe the different types of malware and attacks, and to describe the protection strategies you can use for your organizations against attacks. So this webinar is for all of us, for our adult project beneficiaries from different schools, SDOs, LGUs, and those who have signed up on our Facebook page. Again, I am Joanna De Leon of the Digital Learners Project, and I will be the course officer for today's webinar. So we already provided the attendance link. Please feel free to sign up and fill it out. So just a couple of reminders. Here are a few reminders before we start. So we highly encourage everyone to turn on the cameras, but please stay on mute so as to avoid disrupting the speaker. And also, to get a certificate of completion, you need to register and finish the asynchronous class or course through the Cisco Networking Academy platform. And then to get a certificate of participation, you must attend 2 webinars or synchronous sessions for Chapter 1 today and next week, Chapter 3. And also, you have to answer the evaluation forms at the end of the session. Lastly, we expect everyone to observe proper decorum all throughout the webinar. Happy learning and enjoy. So may I call on Ms. Angel Ramos of the Digital Learners Project to give her opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. To our participants, beloved gadget recipients, and Facebook page signups, especially the teachers, students, and gadget beneficiaries, I hope everyone is in excellent physical and mental health. I am pleased to welcome you to this webinar on behalf of the ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend today. You are aware that the goals of the ILCDB's Digital Learners Project include achieving the objectives of this webinar. This project's goal is to make accessible ICT education training available to students, instructors, non-teaching personnels, and our government workers nationwide, as well as to provide instruction on cyber-safe practices and cybersecurity awareness. So for this webinar, we hope that you will be able to learn about the foundations of cybersecurity and how to be safe online. We hope that you will learn to think critically online and, of course, be responsible netizens in general. I'm quite sure that you will learn a lot with all the knowledge that will be shared with us today by our resource person. Again, on behalf of the ILCDB, we hope that today is going to be another day full of learning for all of you. And good luck! Welcome once again and have fun learning.
Thank you, Ms. Angel, for your wonderful opening remarks. To learn more about the project, let us all watch this video overview.
Greetings, everyone. Before we start this session, we, the project management team of the DLP, or Digital Learners Project, of the ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology would like to give a short overview of our project. I am Eileen Parado, Project Development Officer of the ICT ILCDB. To start, the DICT is responsible for planning, development, and promotion of the country's information and communications technology agenda and it upholds its mandate to develop standards and mechanisms for the protection of children online. Within the DICT is the ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau, or ILCDB, that implements ICT literacy programs. With this, the Digital Learners Project was developed to promote digital literacy and cyber education to students and learners. As an overview, the Digital Learners Project is a consolidation of digital education program projects, which includes the Digital Teachers and Learners, the CyberSafe Learning for Education, and the ICT Skilling Upskilling projects. The main goal of this project is to promote digital literacy, deliver cyber education, and promote cyber safety and security awareness and practices. These are the specific objectives of the project. First is to promote the use of ICT for the enhancement of key public services. Second is to empower the disadvantaged group of population through ICT. Third is to promote partnership between and among local and international ICT, research and development, educational and training institute. Next is to promote digital literacy to students and learners. Fifth is to deliver cyber education and learning contents. And finally, to map trends and inform policy and future interventions. What we do in the project. There are two major components of the project: the device deployment and the provision of learning contents. For the device deployment, the DICT through the ILCDB deploy devices, laptops and tablets to different LGUs, public schools, and other public learning institutions. This is to provide means to continue with education, learning, as well as knowledge. Aside from the deployment, the project also offers ICT courses and related contents to device recipients as well as other interested individuals to increase digital literacy and awareness on cyber threats, cybersecurity, and hygiene, using different platforms developed by partners of the ICT. These online courses were made possible in partnership with different private and public institutions such as University of the Philippines College of Education, Buri Technology Incorporated through CAS LMS, Cisco Networking Academy, Stairway Foundation Incorporated, Digital Tayo from Facebook and AHAD Behavioral Design, Microsoft, and Go Philippines. So that's for a quick introduction on the Digital Learners Project of the DICT ILCDB. If you have any question, feel free to reach us at digitallearning@dict.gov.ph. Thank you!
Our resource person is an experienced IT professional who is currently working as a professor in a prestigious university in the Philippines. He has in-depth knowledge in programming, networking, and the security field. Apart from his full-time job, he also conducts seminars and trainings, projects, software projects, and network deployment and maintenance and consultancy in both network and security aspects. Without further ado, let me introduce our resource person for today, Mr. Gerard Nathaniel Singo. Let us all give a emoji reaction or a heart reaction to Sir Gerard. So Sir Gerard, hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Hello,
I
good
think the
morning,
camera
sir.
is on now. Hi.
Yes, sir, we can see you.
So thank you for that introduction. We'll start, I guess.
Yes. Okay, no problem.
So chapter 1 discusses the basic ideology or the reason behind why we actually need this so-called cybersecurity, because we have things to protect. We have valuable information that could be used against us or not particularly against us, but could damage our not only our reputation, but could cost us money, could cost us a lot of different things. So the first thing that we need to protect, or the reason why we have the need for this cybersecurity, is because we have this so-called personal data. And when we say personal data, uh, it's very obvious. It's literally your personal data. And data is now stored not only in pen and paper, but it's actually stored on systems, on hard disks that are running on different services, on different platforms, mostly on the web right now. And we would like to have some sort of protection for those types of data, uh, to prevent unauthorized use or harm to ourselves and to the organizations that are cybersecurity law that that is literally created to prevent harm. And if harm is done, there's a law to penalize those individuals. Online and offline identity, basically everything that uh, could be used or has enough information to be able to identify you, is potentially harmful or could cause harm if placed in the wrong hands, or if it has been taken by another individual or person. So your identity that interacts on a regular basis at home, your school, your work, even when you are at home and when you are not at home, because burglars tend to get inside your house, even how many padlocks, how many security device you put in place, even if you place, let's say, CCTVs with sensors and everything, even if you have dogs, if they brought bread that's really smells nice, ano magugutom yung aso, they could just feed the dogs. And that basically just means all security, even as till now, could be circumvented with enough time. Now the question is, do they know if you are home or not? If you post it on social media, like if you do it, let's say on Facebook, you post it on your My Day that you're in Boracay, nobody is at home, even the dog, you brought it with you, then the potential attackers or harmful persons or people, within the bad area, would be able to just reach your house, because they already know that nobody's inside, and no, but they won't get caught. Even if there's CCTV, if it's recording offline, if it's let's say you have a DVR or NVR at home, data is not if the data is not being streamed or recorded on a web service or in a, let's say, cloud service of some sort, then the burglars could just go inside, get the hard disk of your CCTV, and they'll get away with it, essentially. So even small things like when you leave your house, when the house is empty, when you go to school, when you go to work, they could potentially use that to, let's say, to do some bad things like hold up, kidnappings, wag naman, carjackings, things like that. But even those offline datas, your online are much more valuable to them, because we store money in the bank, and banks usually have online portals in which, by default, if you registered on them, or if it's accessible online, let's say different platforms such as, let's say, Paymaya, GCash, BPI, Metrobank. I think any of the banks that already have an online presence that could do online transactions, just need a certain amount of information to be able to verify the person trying to access the account is actually the person. And so you should only reveal a very limited amount of information about you, to prevent other individuals to access those data. Because if, let's say, if your GCash, this is just a rough example and probably won't work, but just to give everybody an idea, let's say you're using GCash, right? So when you need, essentially you only need two information to be able to log in to GCash using an unauthorized device. So you install the app, you you place the number, and then it's going to send an OTP to the actual number that is stored. Now we do know that the current infrastructure right now in the Philippines, it's it's not it's not really impossible to let's say spoof a number, because it still has 3G, but I think they're going to turn it off in a few years, or but you could essentially spoof a number and still get that Gcash OTP and then log in. It's not really that easy, but it's not impossible to do. Now, if the attacker doesn't even know your Gcash number, how can that be attacked? Your online presence, your online identity should reveal as little as possible about you, especially things about your when you where you are. Where you work is probably fine, but not to the point that they know that you filed a sick leave or vacation leave, or you're at this specific office at this certain time and date. Don't You could probably, if you're a very social person, you could probably just post pictures. You know what they call late upload. Don't post it like immediately, just to have your let's say socialization platform, or let's say Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, things like that. Immediately know that you are actually at that location. You're not at home. You're not at work. You're vulnerable at that point. Okay. So your username or your alias should not include any personal information. I highly recommend do not put anything real on any platform that does not require it. So things like your bank account actually needs your real name and your date of birth, so that's fine. But let's say if you have a Facebook account, Facebook won't be mad at you if you don't place the right, let's say, year of your birthday. You could just always adjust it. It won't matter as much as let's say placing your whole address, your I don't know, your family members. It's probably somewhat not okay to put them there. It's probably safer that way. Don't place things like uh, information that you use to reset your account. Okay, it's highly advised to use multiple, even for emails, for different accounts. And so if just in case one gets compromised, it only that platform will get compromised. And obviously for passwords, don't reuse them, and always change them. No? So it should not indicate any personal information, should be appropriate and obviously respectful, should not attract unwanted attention. So think just common sense. If you walk around with, let's say, a 6-digit figure watch, you'll probably get mugged at some area, especially here in Manila, in the Philippines, or if you're in a shady area, don't do that. So it's the same thing with online data. Don't flash everything. Okay. So your data includes these are the more harmful ones. So medical records, so electronic health records, physical, mental, other personal information, especially about prescriptions. So these are important because if, let's say, another person wants to harm you, the quickest way is just to, let's say, give you stuff that you should not be intaking. Let's say a person is other person wanting to harm that person could just could do that as simple as giving that food to that person without actually telling them that, oh, if you're allergic to shrimp, I will give you like shrimp based something. Okay, it's that simple, and it's that dangerous as well. Things like your educational records, your test scores, course taken, degrees awarded, attendance, even disciplinary records would look as if it's harmless for everybody to know I studied at this school, I graduated here, and whatnot. But these are things that could be used to be able to create other accounts, let's say, to open another bank account under your name with fake IDs and everything, because except for the actual person, trying to tell that account that is he or she is you. All of the other things are legit. So when they do counter checks, when they do background checks and stuff like that, it would actually check out. And so they would be able to open an account under your name and then apply a loan that you will be legally binded to pay, even if you're not the actual person who did that. Okay. So employment and financial records are very obvious. Things like your income, your expenditures, you could be targeted just because you have a huge amount of income and then you flash it everywhere. Your tax records, payable check stubs, especially credit card statements, they could get just enough information to open another account or just enough information to use your credit card without even physically holding the card itself. Okay. Usually they do this via phishing. They send you or targeted phishing, spear phishing rather. They send you an email saying, let's say you won in a lottery, you won something that you did not even participate in. So be very, very wary and careful of those. And one wrong click, like just opening a link without even entering anything, could breach your systems. If you don't have, let's say, enterprise grade or if not enterprise, but at least proper network architecture, proper level of security for your network that does filtering, that monitors activities for those types of requests. Okay, they could essentially breach your PC just because you opened a link without typing anything, without doing anything. It's just because you opened that link, and it's not relatively hard to do so. Okay, even students would be able to do that because it's actually being taught in schools. Not the breaching part, but the vulnerability of the different uh, web applications and let's say the web browser itself. Okay. Credit card rating, bank statements, for obvious reasons, they could get into your bank account just because they have enough information, and they could just phish or spoof the bank to do transfers, to even give them valid legal access to your accounts. Okay, because they have enough information. And past employment and performance, when somebody wants to harm you, if they have enough of this and you're trying to switch jobs, you're trying to apply to certain company, and then you post it online, they could just contact the HR and then give bad feedback or give misinformation that could be used to hurt your application, and that will obviously lead you not getting the job that you want. Okay, so just protect your data. So where is your data? Obviously, your medical records is in the doctor's office. If in insurance companies, that could easily be breached. So be very wary of the different systems that you are using to store those data, because even if you are very, let's say, protectful or mindful of your data where you place it, but if the system that you place those in are not properly protected, are not properly let's say, because nothing is 100% bulletproof, right? No system is unhackable. There's no such thing. Just with enough time and with no monitoring, it will be and eventually will be breached if it has enough gain or enough. Let's say, if I'm the attacker, if I have enough to gain by breaching that company, by breaching that software, then with enough reasons, with very bad reasons, that person will probably do it and will probably be successful if there is no proper monitoring. Okay, so store loyalty cards. They obviously compile your purchases because they have to send it to PIR. The marketing partner uses the different profiles for targeted advertisements. That's why most of the time we get spam in our email, and sometimes we get I'm not sure, but try doing this. Open a web browser, go to any while your Facebook is open, and then open another tab try to look for, I don't know, Lazada, Shopee, eBay, Amazon, any shops online, and then search for a specific product. Then after a while, you will notice that the ads on your Facebook will be whatever item or whatever product that you search for. It will shimmy itself to a point that, let's say, if you look for a certain type of phone, then Facebook will start showing you phone advertisements. Not and this is being done not only in Facebook. This is being done on a multitude of different platforms, because there's something called cookies that are being stored by the different shopping platforms, or online sites that sell you stuff, or even sell you stuff, not only physical but different services as well. And those are being pulled by other platforms as well, that is running on the same profile, on the same on the same web browser. And that is what this targeted advertisement means. Okay, if even for competing platforms, let's say Lazada and Shopee, if you search for something in Lazada, most probably it will also show up in Shopee, because they try to get each other's data. Now, if those types of marketing or even sales platform are able to do that easily, then what is preventing from another, let's say, harmful link that you accidentally or not knowingly open, and then they also get that information from you, on top of being breached? Okay, so there's a very interesting question here. There are websites or links that we could not view totally unless we accept their offer for cookies. um I think there are sites that will be able to, that prohibits certain access or certain features if you don't accept all of the cookies. Yes, there are those types of sites, but just on a personal note, uh, only accept what is needed. If you're only going to visit that site now and you're not never going to visit it again, just don't accept the cookies. Why would you accept it in the first place? Cookies are digital. Think of cookies as not the actual cookie, but think of cookies as like a variable that is stored on a file somewhere in your computer temporarily, that it stores data, so that when you go back on the same site, if you change your preference, if you've changed anything, any settings, or even your history, it will be stored there, and the site would be able to pull that information among other sites if they have proper access and they know how to do it in the first place. Then it will be as if a familiar platform, or if you change the theme to, let's say, dark mode, dark theme, when you go back to the site, because you enabled the cookies, it will load on the last known settings that you set it on. How to remove spam advertisements or advertise? Yeah, we could probably talk about that for about 3 hours and still not cover everything. But okay, since somebody asked, you could do it. I think by doing two things. First is you need to have a network device, a network security device that could be as basic as a router that has blocking features. So even a normal home router would suffice. Just don't buy the cheapest one. Previously, there's a company called CDR King. I have one of those, and just don't. they they don't have that feature to block the spam advertisement. But essentially, what you do need to, for you to be able to block anything, you must know the source and you must know the type of the content. If you know those two things, and you know how to modify or manage your network device, even your PCs, then you would be able to block them, but not block them totally. So just an example, because okay, I'm using this Brave web browser, if you know what this is, and I'm even using DuckDuckGo. Uh, think of it as a Google without somewhat tracking your back data, but it's obviously tracking it as well, but just minimally. So you could use this. It by default it has this shields that somewhat blocks spams or advertisements or pop-ups, redirects, things like that. But it won't be able to block everything. It's like putting on a bulletproof vest. If the vest is graded for pistols, if a pistol round were to go to you, hopefully it will be able to prevent it from going through to your body. But if it's a higher caliber, then you won't be much of a luck. Hopefully it misses you. So it's the same concept if you talk about spams. Okay. For emails, you could just properly configure your email server to block those spams from going inside your inbox, and they'll just filter it. But if you do it too much, then sometimes even legitimate emails won't be able to reach your inbox. Okay. So your computer, yeah. So if any questions, just put it on the chat box. So your computer devices obviously stores your data. Data storage and your portal to your online data, things like if you use Google Chrome, they have this profile, not only Chrome but other browsers as well. If you do that, you would be able to like store your history, your browsing history, obviously your credentials online. If you don't want to always type your accounts, you could just store them, and it stores them rather somewhat safe, as long as you don't get breached, as long as another individual doesn't gain elevated access to those platforms that is stored locally on your device. You're probably safe, probably. But just to be safe, change your password, change your access every now and then. No? So lists of computing devices, things like your PC, your cell phone, if you have tablets. The general thought is uh, the more computing devices you have, the more careful you need to be. If you have IoT devices, when you purchase them from the stores, it comes with the factory everything. So make sure before purchasing it, check online. Is it vulnerable? Does it have um, does it have a very well-known vulnerability? Yeah, you could do that by simply going to exploit.db. It's a relative site. Anybody could open this. It's exploit-db.com. I'm hiding the URL for later reasons. Okay, so in here, these are well known. It has vulnerabilities, it has CVEs. Just search for your device or your platform. Okay. So things like if, let's say, you're using this Easy Chat Server 3.1, then don't anymore, or at least update it. Okay, so that it won't have this, because it already has a well-known vulnerability. It has a remote stack buffer overflow, which means you could get breached just because of this. And this is publicly posted so that everybody that is using this version of the platform of the service could just update it. Okay. So your personal data as a target. So how could you be a target? Because criminals just basically want to get money, and to be able to gain money easily without working for it, or they're actually going to work for it a bit, but different type of work, obviously. Once they gain your online credentials, the thieves could get access to your accounts, namely bank accounts, any other platforms that they could use to get money or extort money from other people that you know. Okay. They could create schemes, tricking into wiring money to your friends or your families. They could. There was a previous scheme that posted when somebody died. They're going to say, okay, one of the friends died, and they're going to extort money. Then they will get the money. Then afterwards, that can't be retransmitted. Okay, just because they have your online credentials or enough information, actually. Okay, another question. Which operating system is considered the most secure, and why would you recommend using it? Okay. So for operating systems, I would not recommend any. Why? Operating systems are essentially softwares that are stacked on top of each other that eventually gives us this platform that's very user friendly, that allows us to stack another layer of software. So no, cannot recommend it. It depends on what purpose you're going to use the device in, because the PC is essentially just a useless hardware without the OS. And the OS would only be useful depending on the need for that operating system. So anything, maybe if you have a specific purpose, I could give you a suggestion, a recommendation, but no, no, uh, as of what I know right now, no single operating system has zero vulnerabilities. Everything has. But if you don't want to get hacked, don't connect to the internet. If you Okay, let's say you are using a relatively very old system, let's say Windows XP, and you don't even install the Service Pack 1, and the last was, I think, SP3, Service Pack 3. That is even relatively safer than what I'm using right now with Windows 11. If I don't connect it to the internet, and I don't connect any other external device that is connected to a network that somebody could access, and then I lock it in a location that only I would be able to go in. That's secure. That's somewhat secure, because there's still a chance that somebody would be able to gain physical access, and then you're done. Because even if you have the most secure operating system, most secure everything, if somebody gains physical access to your device, let's say grabs your hard disk, removes it, puts it on a device that clones the drive, and then puts it back, they already have the copy. And it would just take enough time, or with enough time, you would be able to decrypt any type of encryption. Any. Just with time. So why do they want your identity? Long-term profits. If I have enough, let's say I'm the unauthorized person, I'm the bad person. If I have enough of your information and you're a billionaire or trillionaire, or you have enough money that I want some of it, okay, I would be able to get it without you noticing it, just if I have enough of your information. Medical benefits. Yeah. If you are, let's say, receiving a certain credit, or a certain, if you are receiving, let's say, a support from another entity, and if I get your information, I could be receiving that support from that other entity instead of you, because I will just pose as you. I could obviously file a fake tax return on your behalf, yeah, and get credit for that. I could open, this is one of the most harmful things, I could open credit card accounts under your name and then swipe. Okay. And you could say that the bank has different levels of security, or policies and procedures and requirements in place to be able to prevent this from happening. It's still happening. Because humans are by default trustful, because we are by default good. And it's not that I'm saying that you have to be untrustful, because that would be bad, but you have to be very careful of the personal data that you post. And if you are on the receiving end, you have to be very picky. You have to be very assurance, or sure of what information you take in, and verify that that person is the actual person, because it's relatively easy to get information that is available publicly, even on some at some point privately, if the platform is vulnerable. And you could also say that I'll just do a web interview, something like this, where you could see the person. There's deepfakes that is relatively open now for anybody who just would do the research, and just would do the uh, just use the time to learn the product, learn the software, and even students will be able to do it. Okay. And the most hurtful part is obtaining loans. Because once they open credit card accounts, once they open bank accounts or accounts that deals with money, they would be able to utilize those platforms under your name, and then you would have to pay for it. And the bank will have this policy saying, "Oh, you signed this. This is a proof that this is actually your account with all of your data, and you will be liable for it." Okay, so there's a chat here. A few years back, a credit card was mailed to me, ready for activation, with zero idea of when and how that was possible. Never activated that card. Okay, that is the first step that actually you did relatively well. The second step, hopefully, that you did was to inform the bank that another individual tried to open an account under your name, and so they, if you don't have any what they call this, if you don't have any intention of opening an account with them, just tell them, I currently don't have any intention of opening an account or obtaining your services. Just don't allow any account creations under my name. You could do that. You could actually request that. Another one, why these criminals are knowledgeable with this scheme, sir? Are they organized syndicate group? No. Some of them, yes, because it's the same thing as, how would I put this without doing PG-18? Because we're live. How would somebody, it's the same question as, how would somebody know how to rob another person? That's the same thing. That's methodologically, hopefully that's the right term, the same thing, the same logic. If a good person is treated bad enough, or in bad circumstances, or grew up in a bad place or bad environment or whatnot, whatever reason there may be, and intends to do harm to another person, that person will try to learn whatever bad things that person has to do to be able to obtain the goal. It's almost the same thing as with everything else. It's like, if you want to, let's say, learn how to do programming, you first go to YouTube, you go to Google, you just search how to program, how to say hello world, how to do inventory management or whatnot. It's the same thing, but it's not that they are an organized syndicate. Some of them are, because there are different types that, and we'll go into them in a bit. But most of them are just out of curiosity. And then once they know that, okay, I just need to do this to trick people into giving me their information, and then I could use that information to gain access to their money, access to their accounts, different platforms, or even create new accounts under their names, and then swipe away the cards after they could open credit card accounts. They get money easily. Not that easy, but easier. Okay, that, rather than the process of obtaining credits or money by the right process. Okay. So the second type of data that could be gathered is organizational data. But before we get that, I'll go there. These personal information are really available to publics once they are leaked, and the easiest platform to go is just to go to pastebin.com. So these are, don't worry, I'm not what do you call that, breaching any violation of the laws of the country. These are really relatively old, but these are, if you know Roblox, it's a game kids use. So some of them does this if they're not happy enough, or whatever logical reason, if they have one in the first place. So you just search it, just type pastebin, and then let's say Roblox, which I did earlier. See, these are usernames and passwords. Most of them probably won't work. Some of them will hopefully not work, but probably will work. There's also for different sites, things like you could search for pond accounts. This means these are old, by the way, so even if you search for them, this won't work anymore. Hopefully, probably. So these are not let's say isolated cases. These are very rampant. So if you use any platform, make sure that that platform is trusted, because if the platform gets breached and the data gets dumped and it's posted not only publicly, as here, as you can see in Pastebin, you could also see Facebook accounts probably won't work anymore for some of them, or most of them. This is 2020 publicly posted. Okay, it's even the last pass that we'll talk about earlier. uh be very careful. Just be very picky on what data and what you post. And this is also one of the reasons why you must never ever like reuse your passwords. Because if, let's say, you're using 10 services, 9 of them are secure. They do everything correct. Your passwords are never stored in plain text. And then the last one, just because out of curiosity, you signed up, and then you use the same email, you use the same password, and that platform gets breached, and then that password, that account gets dumped. It's relatively easy to just try to brute force, try to guess using that password that's leaked for the rest of the 9 accounts. And because you're using the same password, the 9 secure services are now unsecure, or it's still secure, but your access will be vulnerable. It's accessible. Okay. So another question: why do some people cover their laptop cameras? It is just paranoia. Why should we or not cover it? Okay. Um. So the thing about the cameras and the laptops is, back in the early 2000, you this is really off topic, but okay, since there's a question, it's relatively easy to answer. But the thing about these webcams and laptops was their earlier 2000s, where drivers are not that secure yet. It's relatively easy to write a simple program that would be able to access the camera and then open it and then stream it somewhere. Okay, so if on those dates, it is highly recommended. Even for me, I did that. Just put like some form of paper, and then tape it. Okay. So even if your camera gets breached, then they'll see the paper. They'll see the duct tape. Okay. And then when you need it, just open it. But the thing is, if they, assuming that the threat actors were able to access your cameras, they already breached the unit. And if they breach already the unit, not unless you're doing something that should not be done in front of the camera, that I cannot say because we're recording and we're live. Okay, just for adult people, you'll know about that. But to put it in short, eh, just don't do anything that could harm you in front of the camera, in front of your laptop. Shut it down. Okay. If an electronic device is turned off, it cannot be hacked. It cannot be accessed because it's turned off. Okay. So there is no, but for now, drivers are fairly secure. If you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be, let's say opening certain sites, downloading illegal software. Okay, because why would someone pay for a software and then share it on a torrent for free? Nobody would do that without paying anything. And so if you don't do any of the obvious bad things that you should not be doing, then you're almost probably safe, like 80% of the way. So there should not be this paranoia. But if you're doing something, okay, then better to cover the camera. Everything now is open book to most of the transactions, mostly online. Not necessarily, but some of them, yeah. I think the right way to be safe is to update and monitor records, especially government-based transactions. Yeah. Mostly you need to do three things. Don't do things that you should not be doing. Install and monitor network security products that check behavior, not only signature based. And the third thing is update everything in your unit. And make sure you're getting the updates from the correct platforms, from the correct service provider. Because you could get breached because you updated your platform from an entity or a service that is not to secure you, but actually to make you vulnerable. And that actually happens. Simplest checklist to determine that the platform is safe. I don't think there's something that exists for that. You could do an antivirus scan. You could do different scans for from different services, but uh, you could monitor the network traffic. That I think from my experience, that's the most recommendable thing to do. You want to know if you already got breached? If somebody is getting data from your unit that should not be going on that platform, on that protocol, on that IP address. Then if something like that happens, disconnect from the internet. And then that is the time you investigate. Okay? That's why we have science. Yeah. Okay. So moving on. So next area is organizational data. So we have different organizational data such as your personal, so application materials, your accounts, your payroll is very not only very important to you, but also very important to if you're working. It's very relatively important to other companies, or specifically pertaining to competitors of your current company, to be able to get you if you're that valuable. Your cover letters, your employee agreements, okay, very important. Intellectual, for patents, trademarks, product plans, trade secrets. Obviously, if this gets into the wrong people or to competitors, they would be able to um, use that to their advantage and then gain advantage, gain better, produce better products, produce better services or whatnot. Okay. Financially, your income statements, your balance sheets, your cash flow statements are relatively very important also, because they give an idea at because burglars won't rob you if, let's say, you are walking down the road and they know you have 100 pesos. They probably won't rob you. But if you're walking around and you're carrying 100K, 100,000, they'll probably rob you. Okay. So very important. Internet of Things and big data. So IoT, large networks of physical objects such as different sensors and cameras, CCTVs, uh, even wall clocks of some sort. Any device you put into your network must not only be updated, it must be secured, and it must be monitored. The communication to and from that IoT device must always be monitored and must be segregated from the normal network, especially on your data centers, if this is on a company or inside the premise of a company. Big data could be gathered from even from IoTs, the different sensors that the IoTs that are relatively cheap to buy right now. Okay, that could pose an harm, and obviously we always would still need this triad: this confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which just basically means confidentiality means it has privacy. This means if the data that I'm sending uh, has confidentiality, it means at least at the bare minimum it's encrypted. And so if, let's say, somebody on the ISP, not particularly stating any ISP for this matter, but somebody working in the ISP would pull data from your from the network that you're connected to, because we can't do anything about that. You're using their service, we're using their line, we're physically, literally sending the information from our unit or from our PCs or computing units to the service provider, and we have to have that ISP, not unless you have your own ISP. Okay, so to have the assurance of, even if somebody gets a copy of that transmission, it's somewhat okay, somewhat only. Because with enough time and if the data is still valid, they would be able to crack it. They will be able to decrypt it. Okay. So always must have confidentiality. Integrity is just a accuracy and trustworthiness of the information. It means if let's say I'm using a web platform of a bank, I'm hoping for a copy of materials. Sure, I think the it will be sent to the it will be make available for the attendees. Even the PowerPoint, no worries about that. So going back, if let's say I'm using a web platform, a banking platform, and let's say I'm going to transfer an amount, let's say 100 to another individual, the system that is in place that I'm using for that specific type of service must make sure that the transfer is really coming from me and the authorized individual to the correct client, because since the data is going to be running on a network, and that piece of information could be pulled and could be modified relatively easy, but cannot be demoed here. Okay. And then once that information is modified, somebody could change the, let's say, destination routing number or the destination account number, and then that modified header field or that modified request will now be sent to the server. And if it's not validated enough, if it doesn't have integrity built within the system, it will go through. So instead of, let's say, me transferring 100 pesos to person A, another person modifying that could essentially transfer that 100 pesos from my account going to person B. Person A will now not receive the amount. Person B will get the data, will get the money, and from the sender, I would still see that okay, my account is now 100%, 100 pesos less. Okay, and all of those could easily be modified if it doesn't have enough integrity, okay? Or encoding practices doesn't have enough checks and balances. Okay, and availability. So information is relatively accessible, and not only information, but the services that you're using must at least be available. Hopefully, 99.99999% of the time. For if it's 24/7 hours service. Okay. So impact, what is basically the impact of a security breach pertaining to not only the company, but to a specific normal individuals such as ourselves. So it's not the consequences of a security breach is not feasible to prevent every attack. Okay, you can't block all attacks. You can't as of now you can't make a system 100% unbreachable. Okay, that's why they have FUDs, fully undetectable softwares. So that is why up until now, not it's not only it doesn't only have, or SOCs not only have multiple individuals looking at the logs, looking at the data transmissions that a system does from one end to another end, but they also have this automated things that is now somewhat starting to be the norm, that they have AIs or machine learning algorithms in place that is reading the logs themselves. So this increases the checking capability of those SOCs rather. So attacks will always find new ways eventually, because human beings are relatively very creative in things that they really want to pursue, no? Regardless if it's good or bad. So once something is breached, they could ruin reputations. So think about if you are the company of a security product, then your product gets breached. Once your reputation gets ruined, then you will lose clients, and then once you lose clients, company might go bankrupt. Okay, could do vandalism. damage to the property itself. Not only the vandalism that is normal, the drawing things on the walls or on the properties. Obviously, there will be theft, and once those things happens, the company will suffer revenue loss, damage to intellectual properties, and sometimes it's unrecoverable. Depending on the damage that happens, on most days the company just go bankrupt. It closes, and then the owner opens another one with another name, okay, with a better product, hopefully. So we have I have here like 3 examples of really bad things that happens because of security breaches. So an example of security breach is this LastPass. If you're using password managers, so softwares that stores your passwords for you and automatically types it in on the forms, so you don't have to remember it, you don't have to always type it. So it's an online password manager with that unfortunately got a security breach back then, and the attackers or the breachers stole email address, password reminders that most of the time contains the actual passwords themselves, and authentication hashes. So hashing is a way of uh, having a string go under a certain formula, a certain algorithm, a certain one-way hash algorithm, and that it's not reversible because of that authentication hash. But if this one gets leaked, then they could just do reverse engineering, and the process will will be open. Okay. So it requires email verification or multi-factor authentication, but not all users at that time enabled this multi-factor, which resulted in the breach of their accounts. So when logging in from an unknown device, so if their phones get stolen, if a previous known device that that has access this password manager would be able to easily just log in if they know the password. So users should use complex master passwords. Most of them didn't have complex master passwords, things like at least 8 characters, or by now it should be around 20 characters in length. It would look probably like Jejemon, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, special characters, and always change their master passwords periodically. So by human nature, we only try to remember single password that we use on all platforms, and then we never ever change them because it's relatively hard to remember passwords, and we don't even use password phrases or statements and then combine them as a single password. So you should not do that. You should always use password phrases. It must be very complex, and it must be changed periodically. And most of them was breached because also of phishing attacks. Because say something like you won something, or there was a breach in the company, you need to change your password, click this link, and it's relatively easy to learn HTML, and you could mask the actual URL. If the person is not that techy, they won't. When you hover the link, it should show the actual URL here at the bottom left corner of the screen on the taskbar of the actual web browser. But most of the people that's not techy won't even look at that, and so they get phished. And once you get phished, your information will get stolen because you're actually giving it to them. Is this you in the video? Was rampant weeks ago? Probably not me. Uh, yeah. So another example is VTech. So VTech is a children, it's a high-tech toy maker for children. So why is this important? Children's account, even for a child now, they have online accounts because their parents create one for them. And once those accounts are breached, they could create, apply credit cards, commit crimes using children's information, and then those child, the child, will be liable well when they reach a certain age, or even at that age, because all of the information will be written, will be seen as if they were the ones who created it, because this product got exposed sensitive information such as customer names, email addresses, even passwords when they post it in plain text, pictures that are not properly hashed, not properly stored, even chat logs, which could give even more, sensitive information. Question: do you recommend self-signed certificates or any site recommendations for SSL? I should not give any bias. Probably should not give any bias to any service, but most of them they're fine. For self-signed certificates, if you are the one using the server that signed the certificate, it's okay. If you are using a self-signed certificate from another platform, from another service provider, better check it out. Better do your due diligence before using it, because somebody else could just create that certificate and send it to you. Even for emails, it's relatively easy to spoof another one's emails and make it as if it came from another person or another identity. Okay. So last example is this Equifax. So it's a consumer credit reporting agency. So the attackers exploited a web application vulnerability. So most of the time, in most days, uh, the OS, the previous question, is secure. Server, the services, everything is tightly locked down. They have very small vulnerability that is not known to the public. So probably fine for now, but they deployed a web application, a website, a web app that is vulnerable for uh, most of the time the top 10 web vulnerability, which includes things like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, session vulnerable for session hijacking, things like that. So, and even cross-site request forgery. So because of that vulnerability, because of just that page, this was a customer reporting. So think about a page that allows customers or consumers of the service of the product report or give feedback. Actually, the attackers got in to the system because of that single page. It was vulnerable. So Equifax established a dedicated website with a new domain. This one was the one with the appended 2017 before the .com, that allowed nefarious parties to create unauthorized websites for the phishing scheme, because they what they did was they squatted on the domain. Uh, when I say they squatted on the domain, because if you registered for a domain name, you could create subdomains, right? And so they able to do that because of the vulnerability of this web application in the first place. Okay. So next is attackers and cybersecurity professionals. So typically, most attacks are done by amateurs. These are script kiddies with little or no skill at all, because relatively easy to learn how to do penetration testing, how to scan for vulnerabilities, how to do most of the how to use most of the available existing tools or instructions found for online attacks. If you have enough internet, if you have internet, you have access to YouTube, and you have enough time, anybody would be able to use any of the existing available open source tools. That's why most of the script kiddies just download Kali Linux, and then there you have it. They have like a ton of tools available for them that they know little to no proper knowledge on how to use them, and just randomly attack. And then most of them gets caught, but some of them gets lucky enough to actually breach something. So hackers break into computers or networks to gain access. We have these three common types. White hats are the good guys. They break into systems with with proper permission. to discover different weaknesses, and most of the time, specifically pertaining to vulnerabilities, so that the security of these systems can be improved. Because how can you know that there's a vulnerability if you don't test for it? That's why we have white hats. So these are the security guys that are employed inside the company or inside a company which gives VAPT services, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So gray hats, compromise systems without permissions. They are called gray hats because they are in between the good guys, the white hats, and the bad guys, the black hats. Sometimes they get permission. Most of the time, they don't have permission, but they seldom damage. If you're a gray hat, if you're a black hat, these are the people that just try to take advantage of any vulnerability for illegal or personal use or financial or political gain. Some of them just do it for fun because there's like an adrenaline rush when you want to do something that you know that's relatively hard, and you successfully do it, or you successfully done that activity or that goal, reach that goal, that milestone. uh, you get something out of that, without some most of the time without thinking of the consequences. Okay, so hopefully everybody here, if you want to get into like cybersecurity, hopefully everybody will be white hats, hopefully. So because just a tip, your 5 minutes of fame is not worth how many years in jail, right? Hindi sulit. It's not worth it. So organized hackers are, for one of the previous questions earlier, these are different organizations of cyber criminals, because there are organizations out there, hacktivists, different terrorists, and I think the most uh, capable of them is these state-sponsored attacks, because you can't help it, but different countries try to gain advantage over another country by doing espionage, by doing uh, basically getting information out of them. Not even modifying the information, not even damaging, destroying the information, just by getting enough information out of them, they gain advantage. Okay. So we have two types of profile. So we have internal and external threats. So obviously, the more damaging one is the internal threat because it's already inside. So this can be an employee or a contract partner. Why? Employees already have gained access inside of the system. So by default, they have some sort of uh, allowed access to a certain area in the system. And if you're a contract partner, obviously they will give you access too. So mishandled, but it's not done most of the time most of the time it's done by accident. Okay, it's not really the employee as much as the employee want to damage the company, because it's a disgruntled employee, or a person who is not happy in their workspace. So most of the time, it's just mishandled confidential data. The company has a policy to not download this stuff and put it on your drive, and because they haven't finished the project, they download it, put it on a flash drive, go home, plug it to their PC that is vulnerable, that was compromised, and that's how data gets leaked, or open it on their personal devices. So threatened uh, threaten the operators of internal servers or network infrastructure devices. These are for disgruntled employees. Facilitate outside attacks by connecting infected USB media to corporate computer systems. This USB media doesn't even need to be your typical flash drive. It could be their iPhones. It could be their Android phones. It could be their, I'm not sure if they're still working, Microsoft phones. Um, any type of device that is capable of connecting outside, or let's say to the internet, could be a suspect if they're connected to the servers, connected to the workstations, or to even the IoT devices that has enough access for to company confidential data. So accidentally invite malware into network through malicious emails, so probably through phishing attacks or websites, because they were told that, oh, they won something, or a service that they're doing was breached and they have to reset the password, something like that, they open the site. Okay, so there's actually okay, and they cause great damage because of direct access. Okay, especially if you're in their higher ups, yeah, and then you're not that technical, you're not that careful in terms of opening things on your PC because you have that high access. When your unit gets breached, all of the things that you are able to directly access, you essentially gave access to that other unauthorized person. Okay. So external security threats, they exploit vulnerabilities in the network and computing devices. These are unpatched softwares, unpatched services, unpatched usually things, or even codes, because the web application that they deployed is not secure. They could obviously use social engineering to gain access. This is the most effective way of getting access to any system that is relatively secure enough to not have publicly known vulnerabilities and easily available or accessible systems. They just attack the person instead. So warfare, these are conflicts or attacks or wars that's happening on the internet. That's why they're called cyber warfare. So an example of this is Strucknet malware. So it was designed to damage Iran's nuclear enrichment plant. So just think about this. It uses modular encoding. It stores digital credentials. And why is this dangerous? Why is this important? How many of the government systems are now connected to the network, and that network is not on a closed loop? When we say on a closed loop, it's only accessible if you are directly plugged in to the LAN or to the network that has access to that, and it's not connected to the internet. Because most of the time, government systems or critical systems rather, just an example, this one, Iran's nuclear enrichment plant is connected to the internet. And so it was literally available publicly on the internet that you could attack. And this malware was lucky enough to be able to breach that plant. So what happens if they just overloaded something or they probably did bad things? Iran could essentially be nowhere found in the map afterwards. So in the Philippines, our CCTVs, even if we don't go to that, let's say our I think GSIS and other services offered by the government are all online because it has to be accessible to the people, which also means it is accessible to anybody who wants to take a knock on it, who wants to try to attack it. That is also the reason why the government actually hired multiple third-party companies that monitor the transactions or connections to those systems. And hopefully it doesn't get breached. Because if it does, then if it breaches your social security number, not that much of a damage except for money. But if it breaches, let's say, traffic lights, if our nuclear power plant will work and then it's connected there, probably will do more damage. If it connects to our water systems, to our airports, will do even more harm. Not only money, but loss of life could happen. Uh, so do people or why do companies or even government entities do that? So it's basically to gain an advantage over different adversaries, nations, competitors could do cyber warfare. You can sabotage the infrastructures of other nations. You could blackmail governments because you have their personal data, and citizens may lose confidence in governments' ability to protect them, and therefore citizen could migrate to another country. And if that happens, the government's funding would be reduced because less people, less services, less taxes, and less tax, less money for the government. And it affects citizens' faith in the government without ever physically invading the targeted nation because it's connected to the internet. So as long as a service is connected to the internet, your data, you post it online, make sure to only do it at a minimum. And so if you get damage, you only get damage at a minimum. So we'll have a portion for Q&A. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat box. I think we still have a few minutes for Q&A session. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Sir Gerard, for the informative lecture. I'm certain that everyone was able to learn about our topic in the first chapter of the Introduction to Cybersecurity course, the need for cybersecurity. So I'd like to call on Mr. JJ Pura of the Digital Learners Project to provide us with a demonstration of the learning management system for our asynchronous sessions.
First, make sure to check your email addresses so you can click the self-enrollment link provided to you. Yeah. So after you click the link, it will direct you to the NetAcad website where you can access the modules. Kindly fill out your country of residence, birth month, and birth year. By clicking next, you will be directed to another set of information where you have to fill out your first and last name, email addresses, and region, and answer the very simple arithmetic question, and tick the box to subscribe to newsletters. There you go. After clicking next, it is important to verify your account using the registered email address. So you have to go to your Gmail or Yahoo Mail for you to verify your account. Just click the link and then it will be directed you to the password creation page. Make sure to follow the password requirements. At least 8 characters, lowercase and uppercase letters are also available in the password with the number and no parts of your username. Then click Create My Account. We will also be requesting all the participants to provide additional information by clicking the box. There you go. We will be needing at least the gender for monitoring and evaluation purposes. Please make sure that all the encoded information are true and correct. Click that button. And voila, your account is already created. You can now access the course Introduction to Cybersecurity, composed of 5 chapters, and of course there are examinations. The website will also provide you a tour. So we highly suggest to you that to please familiarize yourself with the platform, familiarize yourself with the links available to you, and be mindful of the due dates. To kickstart, click the first time in this course, which serves as the course introduction to give you an overview of the learning management system and what to expect in the course. You may also use the breadcrumbs or the links above to help you navigate easily in the LMS or the learning management system. The activities box in your right-hand side will also be very useful in your learning journey. After familiarizing yourself in the LMS, click the Launch Chapter 1 link for you to access. You will be asked to click a picture. There you go, which will serve as your chapter background picture. As you can see, each chapter has videos, transcripts, which can help you further understand cybersecurity. Each chapter has sections that is needed to be accomplished, and the LMS is very user-friendly and easy to navigate. Towards the end of the course, you will need to finish the final exam for you to obtain your certificate. So that's it for the demonstration. Thank you for listening and happy learning. Back to you, Ms. Joanna.
Thank you, Sir JJ, for the demonstration. I'd like to call on Sir Paul Alcala from the Digital Learners Project to facilitate our forum or
Thank
question
you.
and answer forum.
All right. Thank you, Joanna. For the open forum, we'd like to ask if there are any more questions that you'd like to ask Sir Gerard about the topics earlier discussed about the introduction to cybersecurity? Okay, I think I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you for the comment, Miss Charlene, that everything is cleared. I think we can cut short the forum. And then again, we would like to thank everyone who participated in today's webinar on the introduction to cybersecurity. And we're looking forward to seeing you again in the next webinar schedule. Back to you, Ms. Joanna. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Paul. I'd like to call on Ms. Aline Parado of the Digital Learners Project for her closing remarks.
On behalf of the project management team, I would like to thank our dear participants for joining us in Zoom, and to those who are viewing through our Facebook page, thank you. Also, thank you to our resource speaker, Sir Gerard. That was a very interactive session po. So I hope everyone learned a lot on the needs for cybersecurity. You know, nowadays there are a lot of reasons why we need to be safe online. Like your personal information can be easily gathered by these cyber criminals, diba? As well as the whole organization data. Aside from that, we hope that you also learn the different types of attackers. And there are a lot of relatable scenarios na na-mention si Sir Gerard. So hopefully, you were able to gain some ways on how to get protected from these cyber attackers. Okay, and we hope that with this webinar, we were able to share with you yung mga basics of cybersecurity, and why not share your learnings with the people you know. Especially these days na majority of our population are internet users. It's really important to be safe online. So we hope that you really apply to your everyday life yung learnings ninyo dito. Okay, once again, on behalf of the Digital Learners Project, thank you to all of the participants who attended this synchronous session. And thank you, Cisco Networking Academy, and have a pleasant day to all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Aline, for your kind remarks. So a couple of reminders. So to receive your certificate of completion, please sign up through the enrollment link of the Introduction to Cybersecurity that was sent via email. And then don't forget to answer the evaluation link that will be flashed later on. And will be posted as well through the chat box. Attend our next synchronous session for Chapter 3, Protecting Your Data and Privacy, and answer the evaluation form as well. So for the asynchronous schedule, this is the schedule for our those who would want to have their certificate of completion. Starting August 11, you can already access the Networking Academy platform, or the Cisco Networking Academy platform. So for August 10, it's basically activating your LMS accounts and accessing the course introduction to the module. And then for August 12 to the 29th is to continuously accomplish chapters 1 to 5 and receive quizzes from the Networking Academy platform. And then for August 30 is to answer the end of the course feedback, take the final exam, and download the certificate of completion from Cisco Networking Academy. Then lastly, for August 31, deadline of answering all overall training evaluation form. And then for the evaluation link, we will be flashing it now. So please take a picture of our QR code. And also please look at the chat box because the links are there. Lastly, follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/DICT Digital Learners and subscribe to our YouTube channel, www.c/Digital Learners Project. Once more, this is brought to you by the Digital Learners Project of the ILCDB, or the ICT Literacy and Competency Development Bureau of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, in partnership with Cisco Networking Academy. I am Joanna De Leon, your course officer, now signing off. Have a great Wednesday. Be safe, be cyber safe. Thank you and stay safe. See you next week. Bye, guys. Thank you.